All right, all right, all right. Christopher Pike, are you my co-host today? I'm hearing. Maybe. Well, all right. Anyway, I had to start off with a little LL Cool J. Mama said knock you out only because the opening line of that song is don't call it a comeback. And it relates to one of our articles today. And before we get to that, let me jump into the numbers and then we will get there. So let me get the screen share going here. All right. Here we go. So Fulton County, as of this morning, there's 768 active listing count in Fulton County, 109 under contract, 294 pending, and 290 on the closed. I like to get the perspective, so let me scroll over here. Here we go. 768 looks pretty consistent over the last 30, 40 days. So it doesn't look like there's a big change there. Under contract, 109. It's a little bit down from where we were trending. We were 130, 140. We were down at 115 Labor Day weekend, 111. So last month, that active under contracts pinned it a little bit down. Hey, Chris. Pending, we're 294. So we're a little bit up in the pending count, which I find good. And then the closing count in Fulton County is at 290. It's up from where it's been the last 30 days. But it's a little bit off maybe where it was before. So the question I'm asking this month is, are we up or down? Like, are we dealing with seasonality? Are the numbers slowing down because of the economic trends? What I'm seeing, and Christopher, jump in here anytime. I'm not seeing it in Fulton County, maybe a little bit off, but I'm not seeing like a big drop off or anything. If I jump to DeKalb, Christopher, you want to introduce yourself? I don't think everybody knows who you are. You're muted or something. All right. All right, I'll keep going. You jump in here in a minute. In DeKalb County, we got 422 active inventory, which seems to be pretty consistent with where it was. You can see on the pink line here, it's trending up a little bit, but no spikes or anything. 77 active under contract. I mean, looking back, that's a pretty consistent number. Pendings are 162. I mean, I almost feel like that's a consistent number as well. And then closings at 167. We were 200, 176, 150. We're at 167. We're down from the peak of the summer, but it's been a pretty consistent closing number in DeKalb County. And if I jump out to Cobb County, let's just look at these numbers here. We're at 383 in active inventory. So it's a little bit down in Cobb County on inventory. Active under contracts a little bit down at 67. Pendings at 167. Maybe a little bit off from the summertime. And then closings at 177 is certainly off a little bit in the closing. So I think it's important to understand that real estate's very hyper local, right? And Cobb County looks like it's experiencing a little bit of a decline, where Fulton County looks pretty flat and DeKalb County looks pretty flat. So it definitely differs by county. All right. So the reason I started with LL Cool J is, well, now I can't even find my article, but one of the articles said that FHA loans are back. And I thought that was rather interesting because if you think about it, during the pandemic, when we had multiple offers, FHA loans were the least attractive product to go into a negotiation on multiple offers, but they're actually a useful product when people are looking to get into property with minimum down payments. So they're back, and it certainly looks like people are using the government-insured loans to buy real estate these days. And I also made mention last week, Christopher, that we're changing some of the questions we're asking at the listing table. One of which should be, hey, do you have an existing loan on this property? Are you aware if it's assumable or not? And most FHA and VA loans are assumable. So therefore, it could become a really attractive marketing feature if you were to find that out about your current seller, right? So anyway, I thought that was an interesting comment that FHA loans are back. Now, I want to talk about this for a minute. And this is actually a coaching model. And it talks about the story. And it says something happens. And after it happens, you have a reaction, you form a judgment, and you make up a story. So here's the reality. Let's say I had a bad September and I didn't sell any houses, or my business was struggling in the month of September, and I have a reaction and I form a judgment. I could actually start to tell myself a story that the real estate market's bad. Or I could start to tell myself a story that there's no buyers or sellers out there. Nobody's going to buy a house at 7% interest, whatever story I start to tell myself. So the funny part of this model is what comes after this is you actually start looking for evidence and you start to predict your future. So we talk about, what you focus on expands, all that stuff. Well, if I was struggling, I could find evidence inside these numbers to prove why I'm struggling. If I'm succeeding, I could find evidence inside these numbers why I'm succeeding. You're always going to find your evidence for whatever story you're telling yourself. The question is, what story are you telling yourself? Or is there a limiting belief or something going on in your head that we need to unwind? And that's really a coaching conversation. But I laugh about it because we go sit here and go through these numbers every week, or I'm sorry, every week. And I tend to look for the positive, but I also want to live in reality. And I know people are going to find whatever story they're looking for inside the numbers. So I just hope that the commentary either helps dispel whatever story you're telling or helps challenge it, if that makes sense. Christopher, did you get your mic there? I'm going to talk to myself the whole time here.
No, I think I'm
All
good.
right, good.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, look, I'm
I
throwing
can
you a
go, but
lifeline.
it's better if you talk.
I'm saving you. I'm throwing you a lifeline. So
there you go.
So how you doing today? Listen, I like the graph that you just showed previous to this about you can find the story you want to tell within the numbers. When I was an old radio advertising guy, we used to say that all the time. If you live by the numbers, you die by the numbers, right? You got to go and create your own opportunities. And so we're working on a project in Albany, and I did this in a class Tuesday that I taught. And we went through all the demographics of Albany. It's a shrinking population, very high poverty. The demographic numbers, they just don't work. But then I also showed where there were opportunities and so they have one of the highest hotel markets in the country. So, and the reason for that is there's a lot of transient work that have people working in Albany, but they don't live there. So there was an opportunity for us to do a redevelopment project around long-term housing that allowed for us to be able to do a deal or pull a deal together that made it work. And so good, just looking for opportunity where there was no opportunity. So,
yeah. Well, I think this leads into this article here. Says the Atlanta Business Chronicle said investor activity slides amid a more challenging housing market. Is investment real estate dead? Remember, this kind of goes to that story thing. I could say, hey, investment real estate's dead, but it's not true, I don't believe. I do think big corporate investors are being cautious. But
right.
the small guys might find a way to win inside this conversation, right? They're saying investor home purchases fell 45% from a year earlier in the second quarter, a decline that outpaced the 31% drop in overall home sales. They got nervous, right?
Yeah.
Or their returns got a little tight. But if you go look at property in Albany, it's a numbers game, right? Can you make the
Right.
numbers work?
Yeah, and I think the other thing, obviously, if investors aren't out there gobbling up all the properties, it's good for folks who are just trying to buy a next single family home or some other product. So I
Sure.
think it kind of it loosens up the competition in the market for those folks who are really just trying to buy a home as opposed to investment property.
Yep.
So that's one opportunity to look at. But I also think, I'm glad you got the Atlanta Business Chronicle up because I read an article in there maybe a week or two that, the metro Atlanta area grew by 67,000 people. And I don't think that that's going to change. And so when you mention that markets are hyper local, while nationally housing sales and growth may be down, Atlanta, I don't think is going to see that same decline just because of the sheer amount of people that are moving here.
Yep. So if you look at this right here, top home flipping markets, Macon, Georgia's number one in the country. Columbus, Georgia's number two. Atlanta's number four. Based on Adam Data Solutions. That's crazy.
Yep. I see Savannah, Georgia on the list as well. So there's a lot of potential.
I didn't even go down that far, but Chattanooga, you can drive to Chattanooga from here. Yeah. Greenville, South Carolina, same story. So we're kind of in the hotbed of it. And there's so many markets that aren't that far to that you could go do investor activity. I think the opportunity here is the smaller investor is got a play that was being priced out by institutional investors before, one. And two, I do think it's going to lend itself back to housing, Christopher. I think you're right. I think some of those houses that were being picked up by investors for cash are going to make it into the resale market.
Right.
Housing's becoming a little bit of an issue. And I found this article. It says DeKalb County considers cottages to ease housing shortfall. This whole concept of tiny houses, small houses, allows people to live in a more dense area. So when it comes to affordability, this could end up being one of the ways they go about helping with affordability, right?
Right. Yeah, it's very similar to what they used to do with accessory dwelling units. So it's kind of the same concept, right? The in-law suite in the backyard. You're just making communities out of them, and I think you're going to see more of that. I do think that communities are going to have some policies around that because what are the long-term effects of that type of housing?
Of course.
But I think that it's definitely a need, and it definitely helps fill a void that's in most communities when it comes to just alternative types of living arrangements. And so I think you're going to see more and more of this. I know there's a great example of a cottage community that came up on the south side, just off of Old National Highway. They pretty much have sold all of their product before they even finished building them. So we know that there's a demand there, and I think you're going to see an increased demand.
and DeKalb County likes to play in this world, for one. And they definitely changed legislation for the accessory dwelling units. And they want more population because of the location of the city, right?
Right.
So here's the big news, Christopher. Came out today. U.S. Soccer is moving its headquarters to Atlanta. And what does that mean? I think it just means that there's a commitment to the sporting of soccer or football in the rest of the world, based out of Metro Atlanta. I think this is such a big deal. I think it's going to bring a lot of international stuff here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be transformative for the community, for the city, and whichever market snags that's going to be really lucky. Obviously, they want to be close to the airport, so there's going to be a lot of economic activity that happens from this, but also, some potential for some housing as well. So, again, that's an opportunity. I think that if you're plugged into what's going on and you understand the trends in the market, but I think it's also an indicator of, what I mentioned earlier about so many people moving here. There was a previous article that came out before this that just talked about the sentiment of how people felt about Atlanta, and that being one of the reasons why they chose to come to Atlanta. It's the same reason why people are moving here, relocating for jobs and other reasons. So for us as real estate professionals, I think that speaks to the opportunity that we have here and just the continued growth in the future for Metro Atlanta as it relates to people. Yeah.
The more companies that choose here is just another way of saying the value proposition of the city is thriving because people are choosing Metro Atlanta over so many other big metropolitan areas that put their best foot forward too, right?
Yep.
So it's exciting. All right, I want to run into a couple things real quick. So this article is on the Wall Street Journal. It's actually a video, but the headline says this: state of the housing market, But this is what I took a little bit of an issue with, and I don't know if y'all can even read that. I'll read it to you. It says, housing has been the #1 contributor to still high inflation in the U.S. The latest existing home sales report provides the keys to understanding whether the economy is slowing down or starting to pick up speed. I don't think that this is my opinion. I don't think housing's the #1 contributor to why we have inflation. I think the pandemic was the #1 contributor to inflation. And housing just happened to make a run during that period. But I don't believe housing caused the price of gas to go up. I don't believe housing caused the price of a loaf of bread to go up. Yet I do believe that we played a factor. I just think it's a little dramatic to say we were the #1 reason for high inflation. I took issue with that, but anyway, I'll leave that there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think what they're probably trying to convey is that obviously housing construction is part of the GDP of the country, right? And so inflation is a symptom of supply and demand.
Yeah,
and so if you don't have enough supply in the market, obviously that means that the demand is going to be higher, and so the price is going to be more. So I think they're really attributing, especially in communities like at Metro Atlanta, where we know that we don't have enough inventory to keep up with growth. I think that's where they're coming from with that inflation on housing prices.
Yep. I'll leave it there. I just got a little emotionally triggered by it. It's all good. We're not the bad guys. All right. The best advice most real estate agents don't want to hear. Success always follows the suck. Meaning, anything great in life, you're going to have to power through some uncomfortableness. Like if you want to get in shape, you're going to have to go through some pain and uncomfortableness of eating healthy or losing weight, or raising exercise and or both, right? It's the only way it happens. In real estate, you got to go through a period of, hey, I'm going to have to buckle down and lead generate. I'm going to have to buckle down and do open houses. I'm going to have to buckle down and do some activities that aren't really, I guess the opposite of this would be fun, right? But that's how I find my way to success. There's a couple other in here that I think are worthy of a mention. Number 5 says, Christopher, everything you want is on the other side of your fear. And agree with that. I've heard it said your dreams lie just outside your comfort zone. One of the things that I think is really interesting that it talks about is videos, and how many people are very fearful of doing videos. And I would just tell you from experience on these calls, like if you're looking for perfection, it's never going to be there. I'm going to say something I probably wish I hadn't have said, or wish I could have said better. Or I'm stumbling my words right now. Like this is just part of the game of putting yourself out there. But fear has different levels, right? Like there's people that are paralyzed by fear. There's people that allow fear to cause them to move a little cautiously forward. And there's people that just run straight at fear because they just like it, right? Like they like to jump out of airplanes. They like to swim with sharks. They like to do all the things that makes them feel alive. The reality of this, though, is you don't want to be in paralyzed fear. So if you feel paralyzed by your fears, that's when you need to really engage for help, right? Like a coach or a mentor or something like that. But if you have a natural level of fear that you're still working through that maybe causes you to be a little cautious, I think that's normal. That's most people, right? Most people don't run and jump out of airplanes. Some do. But most people deal with a little anxiety or a little fear, and it's just a matter of doing it. And I will tell you, I don't care who you are, we all got it, right? Like, if I were to shoot a video this afternoon and put it out on social media, in my head, I'm going to look at the video and go, does anybody even care? Do I sound stupid? Does my hair look bad? Like, we all do it, right? However,
well, I don't have that problem. So
I know, Chris, but you got a good beard going on. You know, the reality is we got to manage fear in our life. And I think that's an important concept. And the other thing that I think is funny is it's not about you. We think it's all about us. The reality is they're just looking at us and listening to what we're saying. It's not about, look at that one piece of hair that's out of line. Or in the beard, Christopher. You know what I mean? Anything you'd add to this conversation?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that 100%. You know, fear makes sure that you're human, right? It's one of those emotions that you know that because you fear things that you're alive. But as you said, when you get crippled by that, and it's easy to point people out. Like when I left, you know, a very good paying job working for the government to delve into real estate. And you know, people who don't understand who have money deposited into their account every 2 weeks, they don't understand being an entrepreneur and having to go out there and you know, basically you eat what you kill. And so those folks would never function as real estate or as an entrepreneur because of the fear of not having that money deposited into their account. But you know, if you have it, there's, as you said, there's that reward on the other side. So now I make more money than I did when I worked for the government, and so I have the ability to do more things than I was able to do before, and more flexibility. So working through not having that money come in every 2 weeks, and I'm not going to lie, I was scared. You know, when you have a mortgage and kids and all of that, it takes a lot to leave a 6-figure job to go play in real estate. So. But it's been rewarding ever since. But operating, you know, I was successful in spite of the fear that I had.
There you go. I
Yeah.
think it's just good advice. It's every now and then Inman publishes a good just advice article, and it was a good one of those today. Next Monday, Christopher, somehow the region has decided that this is an amazing time slot for our team leaders to be on a call. So we're going to have to move the time of this call. So pay attention. We're probably going to move it to a Monday morning call, like a Monday late morning. And we'll give you a heads up as much notice as possible. But this call will be moving to a different time slot starting next week. I'm going to give you the last word, Christopher, since you struggled to find any words in the beginning. I'll give you the last word.
There was some technical difficulties. My apologies. Well, as you all know, I'm here representing Toya, so I just wanted to make sure I give her a shout out. And
of course.
Yeah, and just last thoughts on Friday, we did an economic development bus tour on the South Side. So just wanted to let everybody know that there's a lot of amazing things happening south of I-20. There's communities that really are investing in their quality of life, which is what I consider economic development to be at the core, is in improving people's quality of life. And so there's a lot of growth potential. And so if you have clients or have investors or have people that maybe haven't been really thinking about or being intentional about what's going on the South Side, you should probably try to convince them to take a second look at that. So plenty of opportunities still, some of the most affordable land in Metro Atlanta, and still a lot of vacant land to invest in. So if you need anybody that can help you on the South Side, come and find us over at KW off of Camp Creek.
All right. Love it. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks.